Hello, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be swapping out the standard 14 tooth front sprocket and upgrading to a 15 tooth front sprocket on the Benelli TRK 502X. But before we get started, roll the credits. Okay, welcome back. So the idea today is to remove the standard 14 tooth front sprocket and replace it with a 15 tooth sprocket. The reason I'm doing this is because at the moment when I'm on the motorway, cruising around 70 miles an hour, the revs for my liking are a little bit high. They're around about 6,000 revs. So by putting an extra tooth on the front sprocket, we should be able to reduce those amount of revs when we're cruising at 70 miles an hour. I've never done this on this bike before, so I have absolutely no clue how it's going to go. All I want to point out is that I have no qualifications as a mechanic. I am just showing you as I do this as a DIY project from a novice. So if I do things wrong, please bear in that mind and don't judge me too harshly. So anyway, with all that, let's get started. Okay, so to start this job, we must start at the front and work our way back to the back wheel. We have to remove the cover, which is 4 bolts, which we will have to remove. They are 8mm, and we will also have to remove the gear selector lever. Before we remove the gear selector lever, we'll mark up the middle spindle and put a little mark on the gear selector itself so that we put it back at the exact angle that we took it off from. Once we've removed that, we will then get access to the front sprocket, which is retained by a big nut with a locking tab in the middle. Once we've undone that, we can then move our way to the back and start thinking about undoing the back wheel, pushing it forward and loosening the chain to the extent that we can actually remove the chain from the front sprocket. So first of all, just got a little paint pen here and we'll just put a little mark on so that we know how to replace that in exactly the same place. Then we use an 8mm socket, and we will just undo these pins, ready for removal. And this in fact is a Allen key. And we just undo that enough that we can slide this off. And there we go, that is the Allen key off and gear selector off. Then we can continue just removing the outer cover off the front sprocket. Okay, so here we can see the front sprocket, we can see the retaining nut holding the front sprocket on, and then just at the top here there is a little tab, and same at the bottom. These tabs will have to be bent back so that we can actually turn the nut and release the sprocket. So as you can see, just tapping the metal tabs back so we can get access to the centre nut. And here, same again, with the second part of the tab washer, just very gently with a screwdriver, tap underneath and just prise them back. As simple as that. Okay, so as you can see, this retaining nut on the front sprocket, this is a 32mm nut. I know from past experience on other bikes that these are put onto the bike very, very tightly and can be difficult to remove. You need a good breaker bar to remove these. And also to prevent the actual nut turning like so when you're putting pressure on with the socket and drive, you will need somebody standing on the back brake on the other side so that it locks this sprocket off. So we will have a go and see what happens. Okay, so I've actually managed to loosen the central locking nut. It was supremely tight, but now it's just a matter of, put your foot on the back brake please, of just undoing it. And removing the nut. Okay, so now that we have got the centre nut released on the front sprocket, all we need to do is loosen the back axle, which is a 24mm socket and a 27mm on the other side. And we just loosen this off. And this will just allow us enough free play to be able to move the wheel forward so that we can release the tension off the chain and remove the front sprocket. All we need to do now is just to release this bolt here, which is the chain tightener and the wheel alignment adjustment, and this is the same on both sides, and these are 13mm nuts. Okay, so quite simple, 13mm spanner, bring this all the way back, and once that's all the way back, and it's just a matter of screwing the adjuster all the way in, and same on the other side. Now you can see that's adjusted all the way in, and we will do exactly the same on the other side. Okay, now that that is all loosened off, we should be able to bring the wheel and push it forward. And as you can see, the chain has gone nice and loose, and we should now be able to remove that off the front sprocket, hopefully. Okay, so we will remove the nut, and we'll take off the tab washer, and then we will remove the sprocket. And there you can see 14 tooth sprocket. While we're in here, we'll take time to clean all this crap and gunge from inside the housing. Okay, once you've given everything a wipe down with a cloth, just get a brush. Make sure you get in between all the splines so that there's no debris in there that could cause wear when you put the new sprocket on. And just give it a good quick once over, look for any damage anywhere, and everything's looking pretty good here at the moment. So that's all pretty good. Okay, so here we have the new sprocket, 15 tooth, and we'll just offer this up. Just check it, make sure it fits good, there's no play in it. It's all really nice. And what we will do is we'll take the chain and offer it up, and eventually get this situated back onto the spindle. So there we have it, front sprocket back in situ, and now it is just a reverse process of what we did to remove. So we will place the locking tab washer on. We will then replace the centre nut. Now I have looked for the torque setting for this nut, but I can't find it anywhere in the manual. So basically it's just tighten it really tight and put the tab washer down. Once again, we're going to have to get somebody stand on the back brake the other side to allow us to get purchase to tighten this up. Okay, so that's nice and tight. All we need to do now is bend back the tab washer. And there you can see the tab washer is now in place, and we will just do the same on this side. Okay, so that's both the tab washers bent back over to secure the nut in the middle, and all we need to do now is pop the outer housing back on. Be careful of the cables, you don't pinch them. And it's just a matter of lining up all the holes. Now this is in place, it's just a matter of going round and just tightening them up. I'm not sure what the actual torque setting is on these bolts for the cover, but you don't want to over tighten them, just finger tight is fine. Okay, so all we need to do now is put the gear selector back on. And once again, we made the little white dot. I don't know if you can see that on there. And there's the little white marker for where this should fit on, so that those two line up perfectly. Okay, so all we need to do is replace the gear selector. We've lined up the two white marks that we made earlier to make sure that it is at the correct level. We've put the screw back in, and we've hand tightened that. Now we need to tighten this to 10 Newton meters of torque. So we've just got the torque wrench on there. And there we go, there's our 10 meters of torque, and that is all good. Okay, so we're happy that all the fasteners are now secure and tightened up just as they should be. The cover has gone back on, no problem at all. The next job is, as you can see, the chain is very loose, so what we need to do now is slide the back wheel backwards and realign the back wheel so that it's straight, and everything's going to run nice and fine. So that is the next part of the job. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to use these adjusters, the 13mm adjusters, to push the back wheel backwards. And as you can see, as I'm doing that, if you watch the chain, you can see the chain tightening as I push it back. However, what we do need to do is we need to make sure that we're adjusting the other side exactly the same as this side. One of the ways we can get the correct measurement adjusting both sides is if you look on this square piece, there is a marker and there are individual markers along the actual swing arm. We have to make sure that both of these are exactly the same both sides. That way we know that the back wheel is in alignment. On top of that, we also need to measure what the actual play is in the chain. Now for the TRK 502X, it should be in between 10 and 15 millimeters. Now I have tools to measure this exactly, which I will show you in a few seconds, and I also have a tool that fires a laser down the chain, which gives you absolutely 100% correct alignment. So I will show you how I use those tools now. Okay, so I have adjusted the back wheel to where I think it should be about the right amount of slack in the chain. Now, as per the manual, I will attach this tool which measures how much play is actually there, and I take that off, and I don't know if you can see, look in here, we are just at the 15 mark, or just under the 15 mark, which is exactly where we want the amount of play to be. 10 to 15 is recommended. So now it's just a matter of locking off this nut here, adjusting the other side, and then we will get the laser on the chain and make sure that the wheel is in alignment. One of the things we can look at is just take the measurement here along the bottom of the swing arm to make sure it's exactly the same on the other side, and then we shouldn't be that far off when we actually put the laser on. Okay, so this is the tool that I use for aligning the chain. It's called a laser monkey. It's going to be quite difficult for me to show how it actually works, getting the camera angles correct. So if you want to know more about this, just do a YouTube search about the laser monkey chain alignment tool, and I'm sure somebody will have uploaded something on there. So basically the device fits onto the back sprocket like so, and it fires a laser down the length of the chain, and when the wheel is in perfect alignment at this end of the chain, the laser dot should be right in the middle of the links, so that you know that you've got perfect alignment. I'll try and take a photograph and see if it'll pick up the red dot. I doubt it will, but let's have a look now. Okay, so you can see how it works. The laser dot is shining. I can see it with my naked eye, but the camera isn't picking it up, but the wheel is now perfectly aligned. It's a very good bit of kit. Okay, so all we need to do now is make sure that we pinch up the wheel alignment and chain tensioner bolt. And we make sure we do exactly the same on the other side. Okay, so all that's left to do now is just to make sure that this is torqued up the back axle to the correct specified torque, which is 80 Newton meters of torque. There we go. Let's check one more time. That's it. And there we have it. And that is the job complete. Okay, one of the things I should mention about when putting the correct tension on the chain. When I do it on the centre stand, I do it to the specified recommendations, which for this bike is 10 to 15 millimeters. However, I always find once I've tightened everything up, the chain seems to be quite loose when it's on the centre stand. However, when you drop it down off the centre stand, obviously the swing arm moves upwards and it creates some tension on the chain. So as you can see now, that chain is quite stiff, but you should always retest it once you've actually got the weight of the bike on the back wheel, because that will alter the amount of slack. So we will do it exactly the same as we did it before. We will put the measuring tool on, we will set it at neutral, and then we will push up to see how much slack we've got, and we will come back down. And there you can see, I don't know if you can, but we are at the 10mm mark, which is what is recommended. Okay, so that is the job complete. All I've got to do now is put a little bit of fresh lube on the chain so that we get some lubrication on that new front sprocket, and then it's just a matter of taking the bike out, giving it a quick trial run, and then we'll have a look at the difference it's made to the amount of revs of the relevant speeds. So let's get that done now. Okay, so the road test of the 15-tooth sprocket upgrade on the Benelli 502X. The one thing I will say, I went out on the bike yesterday and I actually gave it a really good test ride. I did over 100 miles just to get a feel for the bike and to see if I really could tell any differences. Now, the one thing that I was really concerned about, and which almost prevented me from doing this upgrade, was I was concerned that the bike would lose power, you know, lose torque and acceleration in the lower gears and the mid-range. You know, when you're going through the twisties, that roll-on power and for overtaking cars and traffic, you know, sort of 40-50 miles an hour and fifth, and you want to roll on and overtake. And I was really hesitant and worried that the bike would lose all its peppiness, if that makes sense. However, I can say I am glad to report that that isn't the case at all. And to be honest, without actually looking at the rev counter, I would say all the way up to around about 50 miles an hour, I can't really tell any difference between the 14-tooth sprocket and the 15-tooth sprocket with regards to performance and handling of the bike. I really can't tell any difference. There is a slight difference there when I look at stills, snapshots that I've taken of the rev counter at certain speeds, but actually riding the bike, you can't really tell any difference. So that leads me on to the second point of the whole process. Why have we put this 15-tooth sprocket on? Well, it's because I find the bike feels a little bit high revving at motorway speeds. It redlines at 9, and at motorway speeds I was sitting around about 7,000 revs, between 6,000 and 7,000 revs. And although you're not absolutely thrashing the bike, and the bike is capable of maintaining those speeds for long distances, it just didn't feel comfortable. But the bike just felt as though it was working a little bit too hard for my liking. So this 15-tooth sprocket is supposed to alleviate that somewhat. Now, when you look at the snapshots and the stills of the speeds 50 miles an hour and over, especially on the 60 mile an hour and the 70 mile an hour, there doesn't seem to be that much difference on the rev counter. I think you're looking at around about 300 to 500 revs difference. So, you know, 300 to 500 revs lower with the 15-tooth sprocket at motorway speeds. And you would think that that wouldn't be that noticeable or make that much difference. However, after riding it yesterday, I was amazed how different the bike felt with just that, you know, minor alteration of revs. I went on a good long distance cruise, as I said yesterday, just to make sure that I got my head around how the bike felt, and it did make all the difference. The bike feels so much more relaxed and comfortable at those higher speeds, but without sacrificing any of its get up and go, its eagerness, its torque, its acceleration, its handling. So really it does everything that I wanted. You know, I would have liked to have dropped the revs about 1,000 revs. That would have been excellent for top end speed. But I'm guessing that, you know, if you went that extreme with the gearing, then that might encroach on the lower end speed for your acceleration and going through the twisties and overtaking. So I think the 15-tooth sprocket is the perfect medium. And to tell you the truth, I don't understand why Benelli didn't go with that gear ratio in the first place. I can't talk about excuse me, I can't talk about the 502 road version because that's got slightly different gearing, but with the 502X, the gearing with the 15 tooth just makes the bike so much more rideable and pleasurable. So I just don't understand why Benelli didn't go with that 15 tooth sprocket from the factory. I think they've really missed out on an option there when they designed the gearing of the bike. Going through the revs now, as you can see, it picks up really well. That was 5th gear, a roll on from about 40 to about 55. Absolutely no problems whatsoever. Yeah, so would I recommend you doing this upgrade? I have to say 100% yes. It is inexpensive, they're not very much to buy. It is a very simple job to do. Anybody could do this job, and the benefits are great, you know, for how much it costs and how long it takes to do, and you know how difficult it is. The benefits are just absolutely superb. So what I will do now, I will put up the stills of the dash, which will show 50 miles an hour, 60 mile an hour and 70 mile an hour. I will put the 14 tooth sprocket on the left of the screen and the 15th tooth sprocket on the right of the screen, so you have a good visual comparison side by side. So looking at the snapshots now, the one thing that take note of is the 50 mile an hour. So the 50 mile an hour, it seems to have gone the other way. The revs are slightly higher. I'm not sure whether that was a one-off. I did test them on the same stretch of road in the same conditions, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there with that one, because the 15 tooth sprocket does look as though the revs are slightly higher at 50 miles an hour. But the other two are the ones that we were aiming for anyway. These are the ones that we wanted to see some good results. And as you can see, the 60 mile an hour and the 70 mile an hour, they adjustment in revs at the relevant speeds. So that pretty much wraps up the review. I hope it's been of some interest to you. I hope it's been helpful and answered some questions, and obviously the right questions that you want to know about the 15 tooth sprocket upgrade. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who subscribed. Please remember, I am not a mechanic. I don't have any qualifications in engineering or mechanics or anything like that. This is simply my view on a DIY upgrade. So if I have done anything wrong, guys, don't judge me too harshly. I am an amateur and I will put my hands up to that 100%. I'd like to point out that I have no affiliation to any of the parts used in this video, and I've just gone out and bought everything off the shelf just like any other punter would using my own money. So if you've liked the video, please give it the big thumbs up. It does help with the Facebook algorithm, helps to get the channel noticed out there in YouTube land. Last but not least, all I've got to say now is everybody ride safe out there. Bike Rider Reviews out.